Hi everybody, I am Akasha and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to bring awareness to the fact that America, even though it's a developed country, it actually has the highest rates of mortality for mothers and babies, but even more so for Black Indigenous women of color here, who are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during pregnancy compared to white women. So, today I am going to be sharing my story as a Black Indigenous woman here in America of birthing. And I'm sharing my story to stress the importance of being informed and prepared so that you may be able to avoid the pitfalls and dangers of birthing while Black in America. Let's get into it. Okay, so when I got pregnant, only thing I knew is that I knew I didn't want to have my baby in the hospital. Point blank period. I had already had issues with the medical establishment because had I followed their instructions, they would have killed me twice. So I was like, yeah, I want to try something different. So I wanted to have my baby at home. And I didn't even know anything about home births. But where I am, it's not even legal for midwives to practice, period. Now, you can have a nurse midwife to help you during your pregnancy. One of the most important things that I learned from my midwife at the time was if I make any decision to make sure it's an informed one, especially when it came to pregnancy and birth. And so with that, I started researching everything. I researched home births versus hospitals. I researched vaccinations. I researched metabolic testing. I researched placenta, what you can do with your placentas. I researched I already said vaccines, Pitocin, IVs versus not having IVs. I researched everything that I could get my hands on. During that 9 month period, I was like, I'm in everything, looking at both sides. I'm a researcher naturally anyway. And when I research, I have to research both sides of the story, both sides of the fence to get a full picture so that I can make the best choice for me. So I had everything that I wanted. I knew what I wanted, and I made a birth plan. Oh, another thing that I mentioned, I went to Lamaze classes, and during my Lamaze classes, you're supposed to have a birthing partner. My birthing partner was my sister, and so we went through everything. She was trained. She knew what to do, what to look for, and all that good stuff. So moving to being in labor. So when I knew it was getting close to that time, I decided that I wanted to have everybody there at the birth because this is going to be the first time my family's ever experienced any of that. It was something special to me. We bringing a life into this world, I was bringing a life into this world, so I wanted it to be very, I guess, sacred. And so, of course, I invited my family, my immediate family, and I also invited the father of my baby. And we weren't together at the time, so I invited him anyway. And plus he had never been there for a birth of a child, so he was just like, "Hey, yeah, I'm cool." So went and picked him up. Now, mind you, my sister, who was supposed to be my birth partner, she was already prepared. She knew what to look for. Him coming into the scene, he was completely unprepared. He didn't know what to do. I hadn't briefed him. He hadn't went to any of the Lamaze classes teaching him what he should do. So he pretty much didn't know much what to do. And my sister, it kind of put her in an awkward position because, that's the father and, she didn't want to overstep her boundaries. And so she stepped back and let him step up. So I'm in labor. I go into labor, and actually, I labored a total of 23 hours. I was in labor, and mind you, my family hadn't been briefed either. I did not prepare them. They didn't know what to expect. None of us really knew what to expect. All I could do is do what little research I could, but I never seen or I'd never been in a home birth situation. Yeah, they wasn't prepared. My mother ended up getting into it with her, and then I got into it with the child's father, and I was just like, leave me alone. I'm just trying, let me just get through this. I'm up here crying and everything. Not even for the labor contraction, is just over the arguments that I was in. So I was already in distress. And then on top of that, I stopped progressing. At first, I was progressing, but after the arguments, I stopped progressing as fast. And so I'm up here trying to push, and there was no urge. And so, still no progress. So, um, they ended up stopping, thank God, and ended up taking me to the hospital. It's like we had to go to plan B. I already had an emergency plan also. And so the plan was to go to the emergency room, U of L Hospital. And so we went to University of Louisville, and as soon as we got there, they was already talking C-section. And so when they were saying that, I was like, just give me some more time. Just let me be until my body's ready to push, because it's not even ready to push. But then everybody just started bombarding me saying, you can't, no, we need to do an emergency C-section. You might die, the baby might die, and you can't have a baby this way, and all this kind of stuff. And I finally just gave in. And so I felt completely defeated. I was just completely devastated. So had to have what do you call it? The epidural. And I hate needles. So, and had to do the epidural, got through that like a troop. I'm on the operating table for this freaking C-section. They did not give me enough anesthesia. The anesthesia was not working at all. I could feel them, everything. I feel them touching me before they even got to it. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is I don't think I'm supposed to be able to feel them. But anyways, they started cutting me open. They started slicing my abdomen open, and I could feel it. And I was like, oh, I can feel that. The pain medicine is not working at all. And they was just like, well, we'll just give her a little bit more. Gave me a little bit more. Didn't even wait to see if it had worked or take effect. They continue cutting me open, and I am screaming bloody murder, telling them, stop, please. I can feel it. I can feel you cutting me. The whole time, screaming, crying, the whole shebang. They kept on going like I was not even saying anything. It was like something out of a horror story. They were sadistic. To me, it was like monsters cutting me open. I could feel them slice my abdomen open. I felt them pull my uterus out. I felt them put my uterus back in, and I felt them stitch me up. Screaming, crying the whole time. And yeah, so, and this is one thing that really gets me, because if you know anything about the history, which my next video is going to be, or one of my next videos is going to be talking about the history of gynecology, especially with Black women, how they had this thing with not giving us anesthesia while operating on this. That shit ain't over. And I'm not the only one that went through stuff like this. So yeah, and this is in 2014. So this isn't that far back. So yeah, anyways, fast forwarding. Sorry, you all. It's still traumatizing to me. I haven't even looked at any of my birth pictures or anything dealing with this pregnancy. Like, I saw my baby, of course, but it was just very traumatic. But anyway, so moving forward, everything is over. Back in my room. Now I'm dealing with these nurses, because one of the choices that I made was that I did not want to do the childhood schedule of vaccinations, any of them, because based on my research, they are not all that good for your children. Actually, they can be very dangerous for our children, especially people of color, your children. Black people, you really need to make sure you are researching when it comes to these vaccines and what they do and what they do not do. Anyways, my choice was not to do vaccines. Every single shift with the nurses and with the CPS or CNAs, every last shift they came in there trying to convince me to give my babies vaccines. And I was getting really pissed off, because I'm like, I already told you all no. No means no. And yet you all continuously disrespect my choices and continuously come back in here telling me the same BS. And you all can't even address or answer any of my rebuttal. I'll get to that in a whole nother video. But yes, respect my choice. And they didn't. And they kept on coming every single shift. Kept on coming every shift trying to convince me to do so. So I had that. And then also there's the metabolic testing. That's the little heel prick that they do. That's something else that I declined. And I declined it for very good reasons because of what they do with the heel prick, what they do with the blood from the child. There's been other states, other parents that's done sued their state because they found out that their state gives their blood to the military for mitochondrial tracking. Anyways, they're giving their blood to the military, and they sued the state for not informing them of what they was doing with their blood. And my state refused to give, Kentucky, they refused at that time to give information as to what they do with the blood samples. So I refused that also. And so because of that, the head of obstetricians came and was telling me how I needed to do it because there's 26 rare diseases. And I'm like, well, if they're rare, why would I worry about them if they're rare? And he's just like, well, if you prevent them, we wanted to prevent them. I'm like, why do I need to prevent something that's likely not going to happen? And his logic just was not working for me. And to me, it was kind of strange that he was pushing so hard to get my baby's blood, knowing in my head what they actually could be doing with it, giving it to the military. So I'm like, no. This man sat there and argued me up and down. Mind you, I'm already in pain. I done had a C-section that I felt the whole dang on operation. Also, my milk wasn't letting down, so I wasn't able to breastfeed my baby the way I wanted to. And it was just horrible. Everything was horrible. And I had this man arguing with me saying that I was a horrible parent because I would not do this test. And it got to the point to where he said, well, you know what? I'm going to call CPS on you because you should do this test. I was like, you can't tell me, you can't call CPS on me, say that I'm unfit because I make an informed choice to not do something that you all can't give me information as to what you all do with the blood specimen. And so, and he did. Well, actually, with him, that's the one thing I can say with my child's father that he did help me with, and that's this part, because he said, listen, she said, because he got upset. And when he gets upset, it is nothing to play with. And so he's like, listen, she said no, get the heck out. And that's the only thing that stopped him from harassing me. And so he left, and CPS did come. And boy, when they come, I was ready. I was like, first and foremost, he can't tell me what I can and can't do with my child, especially when it comes to these tests, because I can see possibly maybe if I didn't know what I was talking about, but I know what I'm talking about. And I had documentation to show it. And yet he was still trying to override me. And I told her, I was just like, yeah, you can try whatever you want to, but I promise you I will sue the heck out of you all and this hospital, because what he did was out of order. And really, that makes me wonder how many women and mothers he was pushing and forcing into doing things that they didn't want to do, because he would come here in his little white jacket feeling like he has all this authority, trying to bully somebody into doing something they didn't want to do. And I'm like, really, somebody needs to look into that, because I fear for other mothers who come in here who may not have the support that I have. And so after I said that, of course, the woman said, she's like, there's no problem here. We don't want any problems, and we apologize for how he acted. So that was my experience. And then, like I said, my milk wouldn't let down because of all the drugs. My body's not used to drugs. I don't trust their drugs for the most part. And my milk wouldn't let down. So I had a screaming baby. And because I didn't want to give her formula. And I ended up having to give her only one bottle. Only one, not even a whole bottle. Because after I left the hospital, my milk let down. So that went on. But it was extremely traumatic experience. One that I am still healing from 9 years later. And I feel like all that stuff happened because due to me not being informed on the process of coming from a home birth situation, actually planning a home birth properly, first and foremost. Did not plan, and that was on my behalf. Did not plan a home birth properly. Choosing the right midwife is also extremely important. And then also being more familiar with what was going on in the hospitals. And you can only do so much, godly. But informing yourself as much as possible of the different things that could happen, or the different things that they might say to force you into situations that you don't want to be with. You have to prepare yourself. So that was my first birth. Second time around, this was 2016. This time I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do a nurse midwife this time. Actually, this time, they had a nurse midwife working for U of L. She was amazing, and she was amazing. We was able to connect, and I think it had a lot to do with just the fact of her being another woman of color. We could relate, and it was good. The problem with it was that I later found through the process that they was basically just using her as a face for the obstetricians. So like a mask. So she really couldn't hardly, she didn't have much say so at all, because she still had to answer to an obstetrician working in that department. But anyways, so went through it, had my birth plan, told her I really wanted to have it at home, and I had talked to him because at that time I was staying with my grandmother, and she my grandmother had agreed to let me have the baby at home, and so I was just doing this to make sure everything was move along. I was healthy, the whole shebang, and so come time that I was in labor, I'm up here doing, I decided this time I'm going to go through labor by myself. That's what I wanted to do, and everything was going along beautifully. I was laboring mostly in a chair, moved sometime in the bathroom beautifully, and then my grandmother came in there. She's like, you better take your behind to that hospital. I'm like, what? While I'm in labor. She's like, take your behind to that hospital. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I had to call my mama, who lived on the other side of town, to come get me and take me to U of L Hospital. Got to the hospital, and my midwife wasn't there. She wasn't there the first time. There was another lady, whoever was on call, because they have a team of other people. There was another midwife there, and who we didn't vibe very well, but I think it was an obstetrician that was coming into my room. I don't really remember. But anyways, so as soon as I got in there, my contractions was, coming along. And they told me, like, well, we're going to have to do an emergency C-section on you. And I'm like, why? It's like, because you had a C-section last time, and it's too dangerous for you to have a vaginal birth. I'm like, that's a lie. Because according to research, I am actually more likely to have technical difficulties during a C-section versus having a vaginal birth. So actually a vaginal birth would be safer for me. Lady couldn't say nothing to that, left the room, came back again. She's like, okay, well, we're going to have to do emergency C-section because your pelvis is not big enough. I'm like, ma'am, my pelvic is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with my pelvis. I can have this child vaginally. Lady went out, came in back in with, I think it was like 2 more excuses as to why I could not have my baby vaginally and why I had to do an emergency C-section. And I said no to every last one of them. And the last one was saying, okay, well, your baby, every time you have a contraction, your baby's heart rate goes up, and we're concerned about it, so we might have to do an emergency C-section to make sure your baby is safe. I'm like, and mind you, I already did my research. I already knew the game. I already knew that was some of the BS that they would use in hospitals to get you to have a C-section, because this is a for-profit healthcare system that we have here in the United States. So guess what? They get more money for a C-section versus a natural birth with no anesthesia. So oftentimes they'll use the heart monitor as an excuse to scare mothers into having C-sections. And not, if you don't know and understand that when you have contractions, your baby's heart rate does jump, or it does go up, because it's squeezing them out. And so, but yeah, they said that, and I'm like, no, I'm not following for it. But this time I was, like, compared to last time, this time I was more adamant. I was not shaking. I was not moving. I'm like, no, you're not cutting me open. And so then they just said, well, you know what? If you, they told me, unless your baby's heart rate goes down, we're not releasing you. And I'm like, you can't hold me hostage in this hospital. They just like, well, technically, no, we can't bound you to the bed. But if you leave without being discharged, we're not going to let you come back. And I didn't have anywhere else to have my baby, because my grandmother would not let me have it there. So I'm like, I don't know what else to do. And so I had to wait for the heart rate to go down, which it did, and I ended up leaving. So she had to take me back, and then I ended up going back into labor, and she ended up bringing me back to the hospital. And so this time my midwife was there, which I was so happy that she was there. But they refused to let me come in unless I got an IV. And it was part of my birth plan to not have an IV. And I was like, hold on, we already had this arrangement. And here I'm in labor, my contractions are hitting hard, about to drop the baby out. And so she's like, I'm sorry, but the obstetrician won't let me, I can't let you, they won't let me admit you without doing an IV. Pissed off. And I was like, just do the damn IV. Come on, let's do this. And so we got in there, and of course, everybody's rushing me again to push when it's not time. Just because you have contractions doesn't mean that you're supposed to push. You have to wait. Those contractions are literally pulling your cervix open. And so once your cervix is open enough, your body will have this urge to push. Almost kind of like when you have a bowel movement, how you have that urge to push. That's how it is with your uterus. You'll have an urge to push. I didn't get to experience that because everybody was calling me, okay, it's open enough, push, push, push. So I'm over here pushing to the best of my ability, and the baby came. No anesthesia. I had that baby naturally. So after that happened, the midwife turned around. She's like, well, you proved it to everybody that you can have a baby vaginally. And I was like, thank you. I knew I could. I knew it. And then she's like, and not only that, you also proved that you had an unnecessary C-section. I was like, I knew it. I felt that in my bones. I knew that C-section that I went through all that torture with was unnecessary. They got me. It's all right, though. Because second time around, no. I was like, no, you're not. All right, so that was the second time I felt empowered as a woman. I really did, to be able to do that. Have faith in myself and to follow through and to advocate for myself. Even when nobody else was, I was able to advocate for myself and get the results that I wanted, or at least most of it. Third time around, I was just really, listen, don't try me. In fact, while I was doing my OB appointments, and I actually ended up stopping my OB appointment because they continuously kept on taking so much freaking blood from me. I'm like, why do you keep on taking my blood? And they's like, well, we need to check your blood type and your HCG levels and all this kind of stuff. I was like, well, why do you need this valve for my blood type when my blood type don't change? Does a blood type change? They's like, no. Now it's just like, why are you taking my blood type? I have AB positive blood. I can take anybody's blood. I'm the universal receiver. So why do you keep taking my blood? And after going through all this stuff, couldn't find out they didn't need my blood. I mean, and it was just too much. Like, you know what? I think I'm good. I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna do this at home. I'm gonna do this at home. I had it set in my mind. I had my own spot. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it at home. So what I ended up doing this time was I got my other sister. I was like, listen, all I need you to do is catch baby. That's all I need you to do is catch my baby. I got everything else. And mind you, also, I will say that I had worked for a midwifery practice. So I was informed. So I knew what to look for. So I wasn't just going into this blind. Also, I had prepped my family this time. I had a meeting before, probably like 2 weeks before my due date, letting everybody know what I need you to do, what I don't want you to do. During pregnancy, hey, everybody was prepared. And I was very calm with it. And so went into labor. When I tell you I had the smoothest labor, it was so beautiful. When I was in labor, it's just like the whole thing you're focused on is getting through this next contraction. That's the only thing on your mind. And that's what I prepared for. So got through it. I had the shortest labor because my first labor was like 23 hours. Second labor was like 8, almost 9 hours. This one was only 5 hours. And that was total. Like from the very first contraction to him pushing him out, it was actually less, just under 5 hours. And it was so smooth. I pushed him out. And it was so, I got to tell you all about this because my poor little sister, uh, I told her, yeah, I need to tell y'all about this part because even though I had my last child natural, they didn't wait for the urge to push because once again, I was being rushed. And so this time, I let myself go into contractions naturally, and then all of a sudden, I got to this point, and I'm like, I told Quee, I was like, Quee, oh, my sister's name is. I told her, I was like, hey, I feel like I'm supposed to push. I feel like this might be it. I'm not sure, but I feel. And then she's like, I don't know. And so like okay, I'm just gonna try. Let me just taste it, just a little push, man. I did just a little push, and I promise you, my body took over, and it was like a roller coaster. It's like it just started pushing by itself. I wasn't even trying. I was like, oh, it was funny. And then like it didn't take long, like a couple of minutes after that first one, and it just started. And then my sister looked at her. She's like, "Oh my God, it's ahead!" Dude, and she ran out the room. She ran out the room. And when she came back, But it was so funny. She came back, and then she's like, "Okay," and then he just came on out. Just came on out. And yeah, and you know what? I did have a doula. There was this lady. Oh, she's so sweet. This lady who came because I did want to have somebody who was experienced with the aftercare, but she came after I had the baby. The baby was already had, and already had the baby, but the placenta hadn't been born. And then my placenta, it just came on out, and yeah, and that was I was up walking around like within hours, like, and I was up here trying to clean up, and they was like, my mom's like, if you don't sit your behind down, that's how you can mess your stuff up, and so, which she is right. So I did sit down, let my body heal, but I healed just like that. Contractions did last a little bit longer because it was my third birth. So yes, it was very, very empowering. um, Empowering, I guess that would be and healing. It was very healing. Um, so yeah, that was my birth experiences, and so I share these with you all to show the transition from not being prepared and not being completely informed to what it can look like when you are completely informed and prepared. It can mean a world of a difference. My last birth was just amazingly beautiful. It was everything. And whether you want to have your baby at a hospital, because I believe that you can have a baby at the hospital, but you just got to make sure you have the right support and be informed and all this other kind of stuff. So yes, that was my story. I hope you were able to take something from it. And I am going to be coming with more information, actually more informational videos as to how to prepare yourself for birthing. But before I actually get into that, I do want to go into a history of gynecology here in America so that you can get a full picture of what we're dealing with, because we're not taught this kind of stuff in school, and it's for a reason. So if you are birthing while Black in America, please share your experience so that way we can figure out how we can make better choices for our health and maybe even create better choices for our health. Thank you so much for spending time here with me, and have a beautiful day.